Hello everyone, my name is Arik Johnson, CEO of Aurora WDC. Our topic for today is planning for next year. We're going to take a close look at some of the key areas where your intelligence program should focus. I'm joined by Arik Johnson, our founder and chairman, Dr. Craig Fleisher, our chief learning officer, and Daman Cambra, our vice president of client solutions. Let's get started. Gentlemen, when we think about measuring value and measuring a team's value, and where did that team make a difference this past year, what can we give in way of insight around that topic, Daman?
You know, if we're not careful, we can get into the trap of return on investment for your intelligence apparatus, and that's not necessarily what we're talking about today, but what we are saying is measuring your value in the sense of the outputs, the various functions that you provide to your organization. How do your internal customers perceive your value? Do they find your outputs? Do they find the things that you do valuable? Are they driving decisions? Essentially, do your customers like the brand of the work that you're doing?
I think Daman brings up a good point there, that intelligence is a lot like beauty. It's in the eye of the beholder, right? Your value as you measure it is not necessarily what the internal customer is going to appreciate or enumerate. I think that you need to think in terms of the real coin of the realm of business decision makers. And ultimately, those decision makers and managers are out there trying to solve problems. They're thinking in terms of the dollar amount of problems and how to make that dollar amount smaller, how to ameliorate the impact of those problems, or how to turn those into growth opportunities for the organization. So if you think in terms of we had X impact on the company's ability to grow, or we reduce the overall operating cost of problem X, that gives you the ability to think in terms that the executives think in and allows you to describe more accurately the bottom line impact to the organization.
Mm-hmm. One of the traps that I think a lot of practitioners fall into, in particular managers of programs fall into, is they try to measure everything. So how many reports did we get to our clients last year? How many newsletters did we produce? How many meetings did we actually hold? Not all those numbers are equally important. And what's critical in measuring your value is making sure you're measuring what's important. So being able to differentiate and distinguish among those things that actually made a difference versus those that are just counts is important. You're much more interested in the outcomes as opposed to the outputs. So the outcomes, getting to that sense of whether our clients and our internal customers were pleased and satisfied, whether it did help them to make faster, better, and more confident decisions. Those are the kinds of things we want to be sure we're measuring on a regular basis to make sure we're improving those things over time.
Right. Now, you could take that another direction. I like the fact that you're steering away from ROI and looking at the continuous improvement, the continuous value that the program provides. Something as simple as putting a branded logo on top of your program. We're seeing a lot of our clients doing things like that, measuring the long-term impact, career impact of the professionals on your team, for instance. Mm-hmm. If they are seeing value in what they're doing as a career, and that value, that energy, that creativity is being brought out into the organization itself, that is, of course, another measure of value.
One of my favorite measures is the one we often use in business. Do we have return customers? Are people coming back and asking us for more things than they were asking us previously? The other side to that, too, is if something were to disappear, if we all of a sudden stopped providing certain services or products that we had been providing and nobody's screaming about it, maybe we ought not have been providing it in the first place. So there's a number of different ways, again, of using some of the same measures that we use in our businesses to help us to understand whether our units, our programs, our functions are actually delivering the kinds of things that they need to be doing.
Absolutely.
You know, and at the end of the day, we're talking really about internal customer satisfaction scores. And every customer, every company has an opportunity to define that based upon their own unique situation. So, what may be valuable to company X in terms of their intelligence operation may not necessarily be the same value that company Y, Z, or other companies out there might place on that. So when we think about value and looking at a customer satisfaction index, if you will, it's very important, as Craig was saying, to put the things in that index that are of the highest value so that you know, do we really have satisfied customers? And sometimes that's not always represented in the pool of information. Sometimes it's represented in you actually going out and saying, tell us what you think. going to your key customers at all levels of the organization, and you're going to find out how deep your value goes into the organization. Is it topical, or is it really in depth? Is it reaching out to those key areas of business? And the other aspect of that, as Arik was saying, is that you may not be as good as you think you are. Mm-hmm. So that's why you really need to take an objective measurement so that you can really look at this and you can say, well, we know we're good, or we're capable of being good, but if our clients don't think that we're good, how good are we really? And that brings up some really interesting implications in and of itself.
In terms of planning for next year, mastering the budget cycle, in terms of your intelligence spend, what you're relying upon in order to be able to do your job, that's something that we hear from every client every single year. And when it comes down to being able to essentially line item out those areas where you're spending or allocating budget resources to these different areas of your process, your program, obviously you have spend for some syndicated research, you've got some spend for different pieces of technology, you've got spend for primary research in the field, you've got spend on internal resources, staff, headcount, and then a mixture of other areas. But so often we hear from clients that they have this use it or lose it mentality. They have to use their budget and defend that budget by a certain point in their calendar cycle or their fiscal year. And if they aren't successful doing that, they not only lose that budget for that year, but usually the effect is seen in subsequent years. Their leadership is telling them, well, you didn't spend all that money that we gave you last year, so we're going to shrink your budget next year. Have you guys seen anything in the companies that you come in contact with to support that argument?
The bottom line, I think, on the budget cycles are first and foremost plan ahead. I know that while we're talking about planning ahead, that seems intuitive, but you would be amazed at how non-intuitive that can be. But plan ahead and work together. So look at all the different things that will fall upon your particular budget, independent of anyone else's budget, and then fall upon a cooperative budget. So, for instance, we hear our clients sometimes tell us, well, we have this great project, but now we're shopping around for the money for it. Mm-hmm. Well, if you know this is what you're going to need to do in the second quarter or the third quarter of next year, go ahead and earmark your budget and then start to shop that budget around. Make sure you have that cooperative buy-in, ultimately to produce that intelligence product that you'll feel that you'll need to produce for that time of year. So I think that's a critical aspect of planning ahead. And sometimes we're so busy doing the immediate things that are at our feet that we don't really plan at a tactical level. We know ahead, and sometimes we almost roll those budgets forward without really thinking of the substance within those budgets.
I think to support that argument just real quickly is, if you've got a project in mind for next year and you have earmarked a certain budget for it, go out and get your vendor's opinion on whether or not that budget is going to be sufficient to handle it. Because occasionally you find, even if you've earmarked it too low or too high, or there's a variance there that doesn't support what the actual number might be or might be closer to. Craig, do you have any thoughts on this area?
It's interesting. Intelligence projects and so-called intelligence cycles don't always follow budget cycles. And so therefore, it's really important for us as we're doing stuff during the year to make sure that we remind our budget allocators, hey, this is one of the things you gave to us last year. This is what we've done with it. This is the kind of things we've generated. It's the kind of return we think we're bringing to that particular project and that particular budget. So it's important to have continuous communication with those folks so that they know that their money is being spent well. It's being invested properly. It's generating a positive return. That's got to be an ongoing part of it, including the planning for next year as well. Mm-hmm.
I think the one thing that all career intelligence officers in business have in common is that they're very entrepreneurial. They think often like somebody who's starting a business. They think in terms of how clients are going to denominate value in their minds, and they're trying to connect all of their activities and processes to what it is clients demand. And they're trying to strip away all those things that aren't value producing, or perhaps were legacy systems that their predecessor may have had in place. I think that's the thing that career intelligence officers find, or at least I've seen, they all have in common. The other type of person who runs intelligence teams often looks at it in terms of being a manager. They're put in place as a steward of a program to perpetuate that program's inertia from point A to point B, and as soon as possible, they hope to be promoted out of that role. The difference in worldview is extremely important in thinking about how you both hire and staff an intelligence program, but also in terms of how that program is going to evolve over time. The entrepreneurial intelligence officer is thinking not in terms of earning more dollars and getting more dollars out of their constituency or even keeping their budget. They're thinking in terms of how do I make the company money? How do I save the company money? Where are the business problems that give me an opportunity to shine and that'll ultimately accrue to better and more experience for me in my own career at this firm or at this company? I see that the opposite is true of those who are just stewards of that program. And I think that's a real attitude adjustment that's necessary in order to master the budget cycle in the long run.
Another key area, guys, that we hear a lot is I want more budget to be able to do external research, or I want more budget to be able to do different things within my established program. But all too often we don't hear about these CI teams, intelligence teams, investing in their own people, and not just the people on their team, but also those internal clients who use their intelligence. Craig, do you have any thoughts on that?
It's almost cliche in business today, right? We invest in our people. Our people are our most valuable resource. It may be almost cliche, but it's certainly still fundamental. The best intelligence teams have the best people on them. And if you're not investing in them, if you're not improving them, if you're not helping them improve their capabilities and helping to develop their competencies, then you're missing out on probably the most key opportunity to distinguish the kinds of outputs that they can provide versus what other folks in your competitors' people are providing. So the people are critical. And one of the reasons it's always important, this is a field that has knowledge bases that are changing all the time. What we knew about and what some of the so-called best practices in competitive intelligence were a year or two ago, well, some of those aren't the best practices anymore. There's better practices. Mm-hmm. Some of those, frankly, if you were to be doing some of those things that we thought were best practices 2 or 3 years ago, you're actually probably sacrificing productivity. You're probably not going to be making the best decisions. So this is one of the reasons why, again, making sure that you're constantly bringing up the capabilities and competencies of your people becomes so critical in this particular area.
Absolutely.
I think particularly the mix of skills on the team and the mix of skills that you might bring in on a contract basis is a particular area of opportunity. You can always find specialists out in the world to do things that your own internal team might not be set up for on a regular basis or on a repeat basis. One-offs that are sent out to the outside, to the vendor community, to specialized research houses, to people who might have specialized subject matter expertise, might be located in a particular region of the world where they've got access to information that you need or access to an analytic method that they may be particularly familiar with. Those are all opportunities that are really possible in the networked intelligence apparatus of today. What we don't have the luxury of doing is underinvesting in the people that are most important to producing finished analysis at the company today. So a real examination or an audit of the internal intelligence methods, products, and processes has to be something you do at a minimum every year, and then deciding and making a conscious judgment about which of those areas you need inside the intelligence organization and which areas might be more efficiently done by a third-party partner is a real mark of a disciplined intelligence manager.